Is gerrymandering a problem? This November, you'll be asked that question when you vote on a State of Michigan constitutional amendment that will create a brand new bureaucracy and spend millions of dollars to stop it. Every 10 years, the U.S. Census figures out how many people are in each state. From these numbers, the federal government decides how many U.S. House districts each state gets. If the number of districts changes, the state has to redistrict. In most states, it's up to the party that is currently the majority party to decide how to draw the lines around the new districts. In many cases, the majority party will draw the districts to ensure their party will win the largest number of districts in the next election. Although this sounds bad, there are upsides to gerrymandering. More Black and Hispanic representatives are elected due to gerrymandering. Since the 1965 Federal Voting Act, the courts have forced states to create majority-minority districts, where large groups of minorities are the majority. Using gerrymandering, these districts can be combined, ensuring more minority representation at the federal level. Another good thing about gerrymandering is that when a representative gets re-elected, they gain seniority in the House, which means more influence in Congress. If Michigan stops gerrymandering, but other states don't, then our congressmen will lose seniority more often and be at a disadvantage in the competition for federal contracts and money for building bridges, roads, airports, etc. Gerrymandering also makes elections less expensive. Candidates don't campaign as much in districts that heavily favor one party. But ending gerrymandering would make most districts competitive. Candidates of both parties will spend more on campaigning and advertising, meaning that they will have to raise more money and please more special interests. But debating the pros and cons really doesn't touch on the heart of the issue, the real heart. The fact of the matter is that far more Democrats live in cities than Republicans. For instance, in Pennsylvania, for every 4 Democrats, there are 3.2 Republicans. But in the city of Philadelphia, Democrats outnumber Republicans 7-1. Democrats have a habit of creating supermajorities in cities, and they disproportionately control large city districts all over the U.S. And that's fine. There are lots of good reasons to live in a city. But the consequence of this is that their influence in rural districts is lessened. They end up winning a few urban districts by 7-1 margins, but they end up losing a lot of rural districts by 4-6 margins. This is not due to gerrymandering. This is due to the decisions of individual citizens. The proposed amendment does nothing to stop this kind of gerrymandering. In fact, it encourages it by also forcing redistricting to not break up communities of interest, which are people with like socioeconomic values, which, for all intents and purposes, are parties. So what we're really talking about when we say we want to stop gerrymandering is that we don't like it when districts are drawn in odd shapes to benefit one party over another. But is this really a problem? This kind of gerrymandering will absolutely affect the next election cycle. However, the political landscape in every district is constantly changing, making these irregular outcroppings useless to the party that they were intended to help in as little as 2 years' time. Immigration, new cities, businesses opening and closing, schools, roads, tax policy, and millions of other factors all determine the political makeup of the districts at any specific point in time. Here's some evidence that the effects of odd-shaped district gerrymandering do not work long-term. The distribution of parties in Michigan is as follows: 34% Republican, 19% Independent, and 47% Democrat. Michigan Republicans have only had 1 U.S. Senator elected since 1978, and currently, both of Michigan's U.S. Senators are Democrats. Because senators represent the entire state, everyone in Michigan gets to vote for both senators. So unless the Republican candidate gets nearly all of the independent voters, the Democrat candidate will win both U.S. Senate seats. The U.S. House delegation from Michigan, though, has 9 Republicans and 5 Democrats. The Michigan Senate has 27 Republicans and 11 Democrats. The Michigan House has 63 Republicans and 47 Democrats. Considering the percentage of Republicans and Democrats and the self-sorting into urban and rural areas, and the law requiring us to district by those areas, these numbers are mathematically reasonable and completely expected, regardless of gerrymandering. So this November, when you're ready to cast your vote, remember to ask yourself, am I willing to give up seniority in the United States Congress? Am I willing to give up some Black and Hispanic representation in the U.S. Congress? Am I willing to have my politicians indebted to more special interests? Am I willing to pay millions of dollars for yet another government bureaucracy? Am I willing to trust 13 unelected people, selected by supposedly nonpartisan government workers, then trained by those same government workers to redraw the districts instead of my elected officials? I'm Tom Graham for Return to Integrity.